7 shocking signs. Angels are already in your house, and you didn't realize it. People often imagine angels as dramatic events, lights, voices, miracles that interrupt reality. But real protection rarely announces itself. It doesn't knock loudly. It doesn't demand belief. It works silently, almost invisibly, in the most ordinary spaces of your life. If angels were loud, they would frighten us. If they were obvious, we would depend on them instead of growing. The first shocking truth is this: when something truly protects you, it doesn't need your attention. You may think your house is just walls, furniture, routine. But sometimes protection enters quietly. Through emotional shifts, unexplained peace, changes in dynamics that logic can't fully explain. One of the clearest signs is an unexpected calm. Not happiness, not excitement. Calm. A calm that appears in moments where anxiety used to live. A calm that doesn't come from solutions, but from acceptance. You wake up one day and realize, this doesn't bother me anymore. No effort, no struggle, just distance. That emotional distance is not avoidance, it's protection. Another sign appears in conflict, or rather, in the absence of it, situations that should explode don't. Arguments dissolve before they begin. People who once provoked you lose their power, not because you became passive, but because something within you refuses unnecessary battles. Protection doesn't remove problems. It removes their ability to wound you. Then there is something subtle, almost uncomfortable at first. You stop over-explaining yourself. You no longer feel the urge to justify your choices, your silence, your growth. You don't argue with misunderstanding anymore. That's not arrogance. That's inner security. When you are protected, your energy is guarded. You don't waste it proving your worth to people who decided not to see it. Another sign is intuitive clarity, not fear-based intuition, not paranoia, but a quiet knowing. You suddenly sense when someone doesn't belong in your space. You recognize emotional danger before it reaches your door. And what's shocking is this: you don't feel angry about it. You simply step back. There's a kind of calm that doesn't come from fixing things. It doesn't arrive after long explanations, deep conversations, or finally getting what you wanted. It arrives quietly, almost suspiciously, in places where tension used to sit like a permanent guest. You walk into a room that once felt heavy, emotionally charged, exhausting, and nothing happens. No knot in the stomach, no alert in the mind, just a strange, steady ease. And that's when people get confused, because we are taught that peace must be earned through struggle. But this calm doesn't ask for effort, it simply exists. This kind of calm is not emotional numbness. It's not indifference. You still feel, you still care. But the chaos no longer controls your nervous system. Situations that once hijacked your mood now pass through you without leaving damage. You listen, you observe, and something inside you remains untouched. That is not weakness, that is regulation, that is inner safety. What's surprising is that this calm often appears before circumstances change. The problem might still be there. The uncertainty might still exist. The people involved might still behave the same way. And yet, your reaction is different. You're no longer bracing yourself. You're no longer rehearsing arguments in your head. You're no longer anticipating disaster. The mind stops preparing for impact because somewhere deep inside it no longer expects harm. This is how protection often shows itself, not by removing the storm, but by teaching your body it will survive it. Many people mistake this calm for laziness or emotional withdrawal. They say things like, "You don't care anymore," or "You've changed." In reality, you've stopped living in constant defense mode. When a person spends too long in emotional danger, the nervous system stays on alert even when the threat is gone. But when protection enters, that alarm finally turns off, and the silence can feel unfamiliar at first, almost uncomfortable. We are so used to tension that peace feels like something is missing. Nothing is missing. Something is finally gone. You notice it in small moments. You wake up without the weight you used to carry. You enter familiar environments and don't feel the urge to scan for danger. You speak without rehearsing. You listen without preparing a response. Even your breathing changes, slower, deeper, natural. The body understands safety before the mind does, and this calm doesn't isolate you from life. It anchors you in it. You become more present, not less. You see things clearly instead of through the lens of fear. Decisions stop feeling urgent and start feeling intentional. You don't rush, you don't force, you don't panic when answers don't come immediately. You trust that clarity will arrive when it's needed. That trust is not blind optimism, it's emotional maturity. It's the understanding that not everything requires your immediate reaction, that not every discomfort is a threat, that you are allowed to exist without being constantly tested. What's most telling is how this calm changes your boundaries. You don't announce them, you don't explain them, you don't defend them, you simply live them. And surprisingly, others feel it. Conversations shift, dynamics soften. Some people step closer with respect, others quietly step away. Not because you pushed them out, but because calm doesn't negotiate with chaos. This peace is firm, it's steady. It doesn't beg to be understood. It doesn't need validation. It sits with you in the ordinary moments, in the quiet evenings, in the simple routines, reminding you that your worth was never dependent on stress. And if you're honest with yourself, you'll realize something important. This calm arrived when you stopped trying to control everything, when you stopped carrying what was never yours to carry, when you accepted that some battles don't need to be fought to be won. Protection often feels like relief without explanation, like safety without proof, like peace without permission. And when that kind of calm begins to live in your space, you don't need to ask where it came from. You only need to recognize that you are no longer alone. Conflicts have a way of consuming us, don't they? We expect them almost like a routine, as if tension is just part of life that we must accept and carry around. Yet, when something quietly protective enters our space, you begin to notice a shift. Situations that should ignite arguments, that should trigger old wounds, no longer do. People who once provoked strong reactions now barely register, not because you have stopped caring, not because you have grown numb, but because there is an invisible buffer that prevents chaos from reaching you. It is as if the energy that used to fuel conflict no longer finds a place to attach. And it is astonishing how sudden and unexplainable this can feel. You might expect yourself to react in anger or frustration, but the usual triggers, the ones that once made your heart race, your chest tighten, your words sharpen, pass by harmlessly. The room stays calm, the moment stays intact. You are still present, but untouchable. This doesn't mean that life is free of disagreement. People still have different perspectives. Situations still present challenges. But your mind no longer sees every difference as a battlefield. You realize that arguing for the sake of being right is exhausting and often pointless. You find yourself stepping back naturally, observing rather than reacting, and noticing the difference it makes. Without that reactive energy, tension dissipates, conversations flow differently, misunderstandings don't escalate. Even when conflict arises, it feels smaller, more manageable, less capable of draining you. You discover that your inner world no longer mirrors the chaos around you. There is a separation, a space between stimulus and response, and it is in that space that protection quietly works. What is remarkable is how this shift influences your relationships. People sense it, even if they cannot name it. They see someone who is less reactive, less defensive, less likely to engage in battles that do not serve a purpose. Some are drawn closer because they feel a stability that was previously absent. Others quietly drift away because they realize their old tactics no longer work on you, not through confrontation, but through the presence of calm. You do not have to enforce boundaries loudly. Your equilibrium itself signals them. This does not make you superior. It does not make you detached. It makes you whole in ways that words cannot describe. At first, this change can feel foreign, even lonely. You may question yourself, am I ignoring problems? Am I giving up too easily? But slowly you beg in to recognize that this is not avoidance. It is discernment. You are no longer swept into conflicts that serve only to deplete you. You are no longer trapped in repetitive cycles of tension that never produce growth. Instead, you reserve your energy for situations that truly require it. Situations that align with your values. Situations where your voice actually matters. The unnecessary arguments, the petty quarrels, the small provocations, they simply do not enter your life with the same intensity. This is also where intuition grows stronger. When your energy is no longer scattered by constant reactivity, you become aware of subtleties in human behavior. You notice tension before it escalates. You sense the direction a conversation might take. You can intervene when needed, but more often, you allow natural resolution to unfold. It is as if the unseen presence in your life guides your awareness, not by forcing outcomes, but by heightening your perception. The wisdom here is subtle. Sometimes the best way to prevent conflict is not through force or argument, but through the quiet alignment of your own mind and heart. You also start to notice a change in yourself. Anger loses its grip, frustration diminishes, and you realize that much of what once caused chaos was magnified by your own emotional investment. You do not deny your feelings. You do not suppress them. You feel them fully, yet they do not dominate you. You respond instead of react. You engage rather than explode. And in that space, conflict is no longer a threat. It becomes an opportunity to practice patience, understanding, and restraint. What is truly remarkable is that this quiet transformation often goes noticed by others, yet its effects ripple through every corner of your life. Your home feels lighter. Conversations with family feel easier. Work interactions become less strained. Even strangers respond differently because you carry an aura of composure that is difficult to provoke. It is subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. And in realizing this, you understand that protection does not always announce itself with grandeur. It works quietly, removing obstacles before they become unmanageable, softening edges before they cut too deep, and teaching you that the most powerful way to handle conflict is not to fight it at all. And when you fully embrace this, you finally see that the absence of conflict is not emptiness. It is presence. It is life flowing in its intended rhythm, free from the weight of unnecessary battle. You no longer measure your strength by the intensity of your arguments, but by the steadiness of your peace. And that is when you truly understand that something quietly protective has entered your space and reshaped your life from within. There is a subtle kind of protection that does not announce itself with grandeur or spectacle. It does not roar or demand attention. Instead, it manifests in the way your energy feels safer, more contained, almost untouchable. One of the clearest signs of this presence is emotional protection. You begin to notice that, without effort, you are shielded from the weight of others' negativity. People who once drained you, who triggered anxieties or insecurities, no longer have the same access to your emotional landscape. It is not because you have built walls, although boundaries are present, but because your energy itself has shifted. There is an invisible layer between you and the turmoil of others, and it operates without your conscious intervention. This is one of the most shocking realizations. Protection can arrive quietly and subtly, and yet it can completely change how you experience the world. Before this shift, your emotions were often reactive, dictated by circumstances and the moods of people around you. A harsh word, a careless action, or a minor disagreement could unsettle you deeply. Your day might be ruined by a single confrontation, or your sense of security might be compromised by a situation over which you had no control. You carried other people's anxieties as if they were your own. Reacting before thinking, absorbing energy that did not belong to you was exhausting, yet it felt inevitable. You assumed that emotional vulnerability meant constant exposure. But when this kind of protection enters, the rules change. Suddenly, emotional boundaries do not feel forced. They feel natural. You are aware of others' energy, yet you are no longer compelled to internalize it. You observe without absorbing, you care without being consumed, and you engage without being overrun. This emotional protection is not a defense mechanism in the traditional sense. It is not denial, suppression, or avoidance. You do not shut down. You do not numb yourself. You feel fully, deeply, but your feelings are contained within a space that is exclusively yours. You can experience joy, sorrow, excitement, or disappointment without the interference of external chaos. The presence of protection allows you to navigate life with a sense of control over your own inner world without having to dominate or manipulate your surroundings. It is a form of freedom that most people mistake for isolation, but in reality, it is the opposite. You are more connected, more present, and more capable of genuine empathy because you are no longer caught in reactive cycles. What is particularly remarkable is how this protection influences your interactions. You become less vulnerable to manipulation, less prone to the emotional turbulence of others, and more capable of maintaining equanimity even in difficult circumstances. People who once provoked anger, jealousy, or insecurity no longer trigger those responses. You can set boundaries without confrontation, speak your truth without defensiveness, and respond to conflict with clarity rather than instinctual reaction. It is as if an invisible shield guides your emotional responses, allowing you to choose what to engage with and what to let pass. This is a profound shift, because emotional energy that was once scattered on others' problems, insecurities, and negativity can now be directed toward your own growth, creativity, and well-being. This protection also strengthens your self-awareness. You begin to notice patterns in your emotional reactions that were once automatic. You recognize triggers and habitual responses and understand them without judgment. You observe your impulses and decide whether or not to act on them. And in this space of observation and choice, emotional resilience grows. You no longer react out of fear, insecurity, or need for validation. You act from clarity, grounded in an awareness that your emotional well-being is both valuable and inviolable. At first, this shift may feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. You might question why you no longer feel drained after certain encounters, or why conflicts that once shook you so deeply now slide past with minimal effect. You might worry that you are becoming indifferent or disconnected, but this is a misunderstanding. Emotional protection does not remove feeling, it restores balance. It allows you to feel fully while preserving your core stability. It teaches you that strength is not in absorbing every disturbance, but in maintaining a centered presence that cannot be overwhelmed. And the most astonishing part is that this protection often arrives without conscious effort. You do not summon it, negotiate for it, or even recognize it at first. It quietly integrates into your life, altering the dynamics of your relationships, your reactions, and your own sense of self. You begin to live in a way that is both freer and more intentional. You respond with discernment rather than reflex. You listen with clarity rather than judgment. You act with purpose rather than desperation. And in this transformation, you realize that something unseen has been working in your favor all along. Emotional protection is not a temporary state or a fleeting experience. It is a persistent, quiet force that allows you to navigate life without being constantly drained, provoked, or destabilized. It teaches you that you can be present in the world, deeply connected to others, yet never lose yourself to their chaos. And once you recognize this, once you feel the difference it makes in your daily life, you understand that protection is not always about what happens outside. It is often about what is preserved within. There comes a point when your intuition begins to sharpen in ways that feel almost uncanny. It is not the kind of intuition that arrives with fear or paranoia, demanding that you react to imagined threats. Nor is it the kind that clouds judgment with speculation. It is a quiet, steady knowing that seems to guide you through life's complexities with clarity you didn't have before. You begin to notice patterns, not in an obsessive way, but with effortless recognition. Conversations, decisions, relationships. Suddenly the right path is easier to discern, not because the world has changed, but because you have changed. Your perception is no longer scattered by unnecessary noise. It is focused, attentive, and grounded. You feel what others might call a sixth sense, yet it is deeply practical. It is emotional intelligence heightened by a subtle form of protection. Before this shift, your mind was often cluttered. You reacted to events as they happened, interpreting them through a fog of worry, expectation, or past experiences. You second-guessed yourself, overanalyzed decisions, and allowed fear of the unknown to dominate your choices. This is the human condition, and there is nothing wrong with it. But when the presence of protection becomes part of your life, your inner guidance system begins to function differently. You notice signals you would have previously missed. A hesitation in someone's tone, a subtle shift in energy, pattern in repeated behavior. These signals no longer provoke anxiety, they inform discernment. They allow you to navigate social and emotional landscapes with a quiet confidence that feels almost effortless. This heightened intuition is often most noticeable in your interactions with others. You begin to sense when someone is genuine and when someone is not. Not through judgment or cynicism, but through subtle cues your mind processes instinctively. You notice inconsistencies between words and actions, between energy and intention, and your decisions are guided by this awareness. You no longer feel compelled to justify trust or mistrust. You act on it quietly, without fanfare. And the results often surprise you. Opportunities open or close without your conscious maneuvering, simply because your perception has aligned with what is appropriate for you. This is one of the most shocking signs that protection is present. Your intuition becomes a filter, and life begins to flow in a way that feels safer, more aligned, and less reactive. It is not only external interactions that are affected. Your inner life changes as well. You start recognizing your own emotional patterns with clarity. You understand your triggers, your desires, your doubts, and your needs without the fog of confusion or fear. Decisions that once felt overwhelming now feel manageable because you trust your inner guidance. You know when to step forward, when to pause, and when to let go. This is not luck or coincidence. It is the result of your energy being aligned with a protective presence that allows discernment to flourish. You are no longer constantly questioning yourself or the world around you. Instead, you act from a place of quiet authority over your own life. What is remarkable about this shift is that it is subtle at first. You may notice it in small ways, a gut feeling that proves accurate, a moment of clarity in a confusing situation, a decision that feels undeniably right without overthinking. Gradually, these moments accumulate, forming a sense of trust in your own judgment. The more you listen to this inner voice, the stronger it becomes, until you begin to recognize a pattern. You are not just guessing, and you are not just lucky. You are protected, guided, and supported by forces that you may not consciously perceive. This protection does not control your life or remove challenges. It simply illuminates the path in a way that was previously unavailable. Heightened intuition also affects how you handle uncertainty. You stop being paralyzed by the unknown because you understand that clarity often precedes action. You feel the subtle cues of timing and opportunity, and you learn to wait for the right moment rather than forcing outcomes. This patience is not passive. It is a skill developed through the quiet guidance of intuition. You begin to trust the process, to recognize that some answers arrive only when you are ready to perceive them. You act with precision, not impulsivity, and the consequences are often far less chaotic than before. And perhaps the most profound effect of this sharpened intuition is the peace it brings. Life still presents challenges, still tests patience, still demands choices, but you no longer feel lost in the turbulence. You move with awareness, confidence, and alignment. You trust that you will perceive the signals you need to make the right decision, and in that trust you find freedom. You no longer chase signs or search desperately for confirmation, because clarity has replaced obsession. You act with discernment, guided by a knowing that feels both natural and powerful. And it is in this space that you realize your life has been quietly protected all along. Is a moment in life when you start noticing that negativity no longer holds the same power over you. People who once drained your energy, who brought tension and chaos into your days, begin to fade from your life as if by some invisible hand. It is not that you have consciously pushed them away or that you have become cold or indifferent. Rather, your presence, your energy, your very state of being has shifted in such a way that negativity simply cannot find a foothold. Situations that once pulled you into frustration, resentment, or despair now pass through like water over stone. They touch you lightly, but they do not stay. And this is one of the most shocking signs of protection in your life. The forces that once disturbed you no longer have access. You are, in a very real sense, shielded. Before this shift, negativity was unavoidable. You carried the weight of other people's moods, the consequences of toxic interactions, and the echoes of criticism and judgment. Your attention, your time, and your emotions were constantly hijacked by forces outside your control. You learned to anticipate attacks, to defend yourself before they even happened, to brace for the worst because that was all you knew. And in doing so, your energy was scattered. You reacted rather than chose. You felt the sting of hostility, manipulation, and envy, as if they were unavoidable elements of life. But when protection enters, the dynamic changes. Suddenly, negativity no longer has the same access. It cannot attach itself to you as easily. Your energy is no longer a playground for chaos, and the effects are both profound and liberating. This does not mean that life becomes perfect or free of challenges. Problems still exist. Difficult people still appear. Adversity still tests patience. But your relationship to these challenges is transformed. Where once you were drawn into the turbulence, now you remain grounded, able to respond with clarity rather than react with fear or anger. Your presence becomes a kind of filter. Toxicity may attempt to enter, but it meets resistance it cannot overcome. And you notice this resistance not as a defensive effort, but as a natural state of being. You simply no longer carry what does not belong to you. What is remarkable is how this shift affects relationships. You may notice that certain people begin to drift away, not because you have rejected them, but because the energy that once fed tension is no longer available. They may feel frustrated that their usual strategies no longer work, or surprised that you no longer react to provocation. Meanwhile, people who are aligned with positivity, growth, and respect naturally gravitate toward you. Your life begins to reflect the quality of energy you now maintain. Those who bring chaos or harm are quietly filtered out, while those who bring support and understanding remain. This is not a matter of control. It is a matter of alignment. The unseen protection in your life organizes your interactions in a way that preserves your well-being without effort or confrontation. Removal of negativity also enhances your clarity and decision-making. When your energy is no longer consumed by external disturbances, you can think more clearly, act more decisively, and engage with life more fully. Opportunities that were previously invisible, you sense dangers before they arrive, and you navigate relationships with an ease that feels almost magical. You are not manipulating the world, you are simply moving through it with a presence that naturally discourages destructive influences. Life becomes smoother, not because obstacles disappear, but because you no longer give them the energy they need to persist. At first, this change can feel strange. You may question why certain people are no longer part of your life, why some conflicts no longer arise, or why you no longer feel compelled to engage in fights that used to seem unavoidable. You may even feel guilty for not reacting the way you once did. But this is a misunderstanding. The absence of negativity is not abandonment or avoidance. It is protection. It is the universe, life, or fate, whatever you choose to call it, quietly removing what no longer serves you. You do not need to chase it, fight it, or justify it. You simply experience the relief of having energy that is finally your own. The consequences of this shift extend beyond emotional well-being. Your health, productivity, creativity, and peace of mind all benefit. You can focus on growth instead of defense, creation instead of reaction, presence instead of distraction. Your days feel lighter, more intentional, more alive. And what is most remarkable is that this process often happens without conscious effort. You do not have to plan or force it. You do not need rituals or strategies. Protection enters subtly, aligning your energy in a way that naturally minimizes negativity and maximizes peace. Ultimately, the realization that negative influences quietly lose access to your life is profound. Evidence that unseen forces, or perhaps your own deeper awareness, are shaping your reality in ways you may not have recognized. You begin to live with less fear, less frustration, and less emotional exhaustion. You feel a quiet freedom that cannot be explained by logic alone. And in that freedom, you recognize the truth. You are not merely surviving the world. You are moving through it under a shield that was already there, quietly ensuring that your life unfolds with clarity and calm. There comes a moment when you realize that you no longer need to search for signs. You've spent so long scanning the world, looking for confirmations, interpreting coincidences, trying to decode every little detail as if your peace depended on it. And perhaps in the past, it did. You chased messages in numbers, in dreams, in gestures, in subtle shifts that you hoped would reassure you that everything was aligned, that you were protected, that you were on the right path. But over time, something changes. The need to constantly look for confirmation diminishes. You stop obsessing over whether the universe is sending signals because clarity arrives naturally. You stop questioning every outcome, every interaction, every small moment, and instead you begin to notice a quiet certainty that did not exist before. This clarity does not come with drama or spectacle. It does not arrive in a blinding flash or a loud proclamation. It is subtle, almost imperceptible, but undeniable. You notice it in the way decisions no longer feel like battles. You notice it in the way you wake up without the anxiety that once pushed you to search for signs before taking action. You notice it in the way your inner voice guides you steadily, without hesitation, without fear. It is as if a protective presence has aligned itself with your life so seamlessly that you no longer need external confirmations to feel secure. You act because it feels right, not because you have decoded a hidden message. And that is the profound shift. Trust replaces obsession. Before this change, life was often a series of questions without answers. You looked for reassurance in everything, trying to make sense of randomness, trying to find patterns that would give you control over uncertainty. You believed that missing a sign might mean missing your path, that ignoring a signal might mean inviting chaos. This constant vigilance was exhausting. Your mind was always alert, always interpreting, always anticipating. But when protection enters your life in a quiet, unassuming way, the compulsion to search dissipates. You still notice details, still perceive subtle cues, but you no longer hinge your peace on them. You have internalized the guidance you once sought externally. You trust yourself. You trust the process. You trust that clarity will reveal itself naturally when it is needed. This shift also changes how you interact with the world. You become less reactive, less anxious, less desperate for validation. You act with intent, shun rather than reaction. You notice opportunities and obstacles without needing constant confirmation that your perception is correct. Life unfolds with a sense of rhythm and flow that you did not experience before. Where once there was confusion, now there is discernment. Where once there was doubt, now there is a quiet knowing. And this knowing is not arrogance or certainty in the sense of inflexibility. It is the confidence that comes from being aligned with something greater than yourself, whether you interpret it as protection, intuition, or simply the natural order of life. The beauty of this clarity is that it allows you to focus on what truly matters. You stop wasting energy decoding trivial events or obsessing over potential signs that may or may not exist. Attention turns inward and outward in balance. You notice your own growth, the alignment of your values, the integrity of your choices. You notice the people who genuinely belong in your life, the opportunities that align with your purpose, and the situations that truly require your attention. This focus is liberating. It frees you from the cycle of constant questioning and searching. You act with confidence, and your actions are guided by wisdom rather than fear. It is natural to feel a sense of lost first. The habit of searching for signs may have been comforting in its own way, even if exhausting. You may feel uncertain whether you are missing something, whether you are ignoring a message, but the truth is that what you need is already present. Protection has quietly entered your life, aligning circumstances, sharpening intuition, dissolving negativity, and calming your mind. Signs you once chased are no longer necessary because the effect they sought to create has already been realized internally. You no longer rely on external confirmation because you have become your own source of clarity. This transformation also strengthens your sense of self. You begin to understand that guidance is not always visible, that support does not always announce itself, and that clarity is often quiet. You learn to trust your instincts, your reasoning, and your inner awareness. You understand that life will provide the signals you need when you need them, and until then you remain grounded, patient, and centered. This patience is not passive waiting. It is active trust. It is the ability to move through life with attention, awareness, and intention, without being hijacked by doubt or obsessive interpretation. Ultimately, the cessation of your search for signs is a sign in itself. It is proof that clarity has arrived, that protection is present, and that your inner guidance is strong. You no longer chase, you flow. You no longer question every minor detail, you discern what truly matters. You no longer need constant reassurance, you embody certainty. And in this state you realize that the universe, life, or whatever force guides you has been quietly supporting you all along, shaping your path and ensuring that you are moving forward with the wisdom, peace, and clarity you were always meant to carry.